Hi, I'm Luke Tegner. I'm Head of Consulting at IWSR. IWSR is the leading data and insights provider for the total beverage alcohol market. And today I'm going to be talking about what is happening in the UK, in the spirits category and in the on-trade. So what are the key trends in UK beverage alcohol? So we'll go from left to right here, and effectively we're going to start looking at the shifting occasions. So pre-drinks and after parties are increasingly bookended in the on-trade. So and there's added value experiences such as competitive socialising, dry clubbing. They're offering sort of high levels of engagement activity, often though without alcohol. From the left-hand side, the popularity of early evening and daytime occasions, they're lending themselves more to lighter aperitif-style drinks and cocktails, and including things like premium beer. So spirit aperitifs are one of the strongest growing spirits categories in 2024. And then there's a continued uptick of agave spirits, let's call it tequila, that's what it is essentially in the UK. Slightly slower than previously, and that's being supported by the rise of tequila as a cocktail ingredient in cocktails. Second point here is around an increasing proportion of drinkers who tell us in tracking studies they recall consuming multiple beverage categories at their last occasion. So repertoires are broadening. When people are out in the on-trade, they tend to drink more different styles of drink than they do in the off-trade. This is being driven by legal drinking age Gen Z and also millennials. But that overall growth is slightly hindered by the older generations who are slightly cutting back on spirits in the UK. Third point here is about lifestyle, and lifestyle trends are driving growth. So despite overall total beverage alcohol volume decline, there are bright spots emerging. RTDs, ready to drinks, they continue to grow, and the value is rising in lifestyle led segments. I've already mentioned tequila, but also in things like non-alc and in liqueurs. So people changing what they're doing, moderating, and that's driving different categories. Also in there, beer and sparkling wine are gaining ground in the on-trade, and that's supporting the shifting consumer habits. The fourth point here, I've already just mentioned it, moderation. That momentum is enduring, but there's some good news in there. There's various different drivers of moderation, which we'll talk about in a minute, and some can be classified as incidental moderation, others as intentional moderation. I think the good news we're going to take out of this is that the younger generations, they participate in alcohol. They have not given up. So what do the numbers say? What have we got here? We've got a look at the 5 different categories that matter in total beverage alcohol. You've got beer, wine, spirits, cider and RTDs. And we're looking at this on a serve basis. So this is volumetric. What has happened over the last 5 years and also what happened last year. So a lot of data on this chart. And what we're seeing is from the top, beer reverted after a couple of years of growth. Last year it declined, and it reverted to long-term trends of modest year-on-year declines. Wine has struggled. It's a global downward trend for the category, and especially in the on-trade. And this is as much as anything due to the difficult economic climate, which stops or reins in things like champagne sales, and there was heavy discounting at the end of 2024. Prosecco, on the other hand, stabilised, and there were some gains for other sparkling wines. Spirits, which is what this conversation is mainly about, and that's the middle block there, suffered really heavy losses across the board. Flavours, white spirits, particularly hard hit, and we'll see that in the next couple of charts. And on-trade sales saw heavier volume losses. Tequila made most of its gains, because there were gains in tequila, effectively from new retail listings. But it is a category which is on the rise, as I mentioned, due in part to the cocktail culture. The final one there is RTDs. It's the only category to grow. It grew at plus 4% from a small base. It's now plus 8% versus 2019. So on the right hand side you can see the percentage change year on year. The only category that's growing is RTD. So it's a tough time. You guys all know that, but this is the data that backs it up. So when we look at spirits, because again that's what this is all about, We're looking at what happened here in 2024 over 23. Those are the light blue bars. And then you've got the IWSR forecast for the next 5 years in percentage terms, what we're seeing as a compound growth rate we expect to see in each of these categories going forward. So the key point here is that there are sadly more categories which are forecast to decline than to grow. And on the right hand side you can see real struggles there for gin, struggles for US whiskey, vodka and scotch, and even bitters down. On the left hand side are those categories where we're expecting more growth. So you've got tequila, agave based spirits, but again mainly tequila, liqueurs, non-alc and tequila are the two categories which are expected to have the most growth. And then there is some good news also for Irish whiskey looking forward. In the on-trade, because that's what this is all about, so what are the key areas for growth in the on-trade? Well, I've put here just the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 categories that we're forecasting growth. So beer is expected to grow in the on-trade, big volume. In a strange way, beer is actually premiumizing, and it's an up-down trading premiumization. So people moving out of more expensive categories like wine and having a premium beer. So they're still having a premium experience, but at a slightly lower cost base. Again, mentioned it before, agave-based spirits and non-alc spirits. We saw it earlier in the total trade, they're growing, and this is a non-trade view. Some really positive growth curves looking forward there. Jumping on to lifestyle and occasions, these are shifting. On trade, consumption is shifting earlier. You've had a massive decline in late night occasions. There's something like 25% fewer nightclubs at the end of 2024 than there were pre-COVID. So big shift, and it's shifting to the earlier consumption, the aperitivo moment. That's also been driven by moderation and to things like safety factors. People would prefer to go out earlier. It's slightly cheaper, and of course if you're getting home before the trains stop and you're not out at 4 o'clock in the morning, then there's a safety factor involved as well. So a lot of factors are driving earlier consumption. Moderation, I've already mentioned that. These drivers are evolving. There are about 5 different drivers to moderation. The most important one by some distance is economic. When people have less money, beverage alcohol is the category that suffers the most. So people still buy food, obviously they still need to buy their home sort of goods, etc., but alcohol suffers, and the correlation is very tight. So economic moderation is the number one concern. The good news is it's therefore it's cyclical rather than permanent. Lifestyle moderation, though, is an important factor. Consumers are basically spending less time out drinking and more time on other stuff like fitness, like wellness, on other experiences in their life. And there is a degree of moderation that comes from that. Partly because you've got less money to spend on alcohol, partly because you're just doing other things. So the world has moved on. Health moderation, pharmaceutical, not so important, and generational moderation. Weirdly, in spite of all the headlines that Gen Z has given up drinking, that is not in fact the case. And we can see that here. This is a view of Gen Z, or legal drinking age Gen Z in the UK, and we got 1, 2, 3 different charts here. The one on the left hand side shows their participation, and that is a 2-year view. So in April 2023, just 66% of Gen Z said they were drinking alcohol. That has jumped by 7 percentage points up to 76%. So that sober curious moment, that is basically behind us, because that 76% is very much in line with other age cohorts. They also drink more in the on-trade. The middle chart shows Gen Z on the right in the dark colour, all drinkers on the left. They're more likely to drink in the on-trade than the general in the UK. Why is that good news? Broader repertoires, and also people tend to drink more when they're in the on-trade than they do when they're at home. On the right-hand side, you've got what they drink, and it's who drinks spirits. And again, this is a look at all drinkers against Gen Z. Gen Z on the right, 85% of Gen Z drink spirits, and that compares with 78% of the general population. So this is good news, because Gen Z have taken the hit, they've taken the blame for moderation and the downshift, and it's really not their fault. So just to wrap up, a few key takeaways. So from the left-hand side, we've already mentioned it, drinking occasions are shifting earlier. What can you do about that? Well, you can cater to the growing demand for those non-traditional drinks and sips with sort of easy sparklers and lighter drinks and cocktails. So moderation is evolving. Yep, we've seen that. It's different rationale for it. So we need to ensure that we're making really quality offerings that are affordable. So allowing for people to up-down trade to better experiences when they are drinking. Gen Z, they are engaged. And what do they need? We need to develop offers for them that sort of alleviate their daily stresses, give them joy, give them connections, making indulgence permissible for them. And that's a good way to go forward. And momentum does lie in these changing occasions. We need to refocus brand availability, not just to those traditional drinking environments, the on-trade, the off-trade channels, but where consumers are spending their time. We mentioned earlier that they're doing other stuff. That doesn't mean that they're not drinking, but it may mean that the brands that they're looking for are just not available there. So we have to make those brands available. We've got to be part of where they spend their time. We've got to be part of their experience. Okay, well, I hope you found that interesting. And if you want to find out more about what's going on in total beverage alcohol anywhere in the world, or particularly in the UK, then jump on our website at theiwsr.com and you can find out lots more about the industry.